It's Nolan.
Now, before we get started, make sure y'all hitting that like button. Make sure y'all sharing it on your respective platforms. Let somebody know what we're doing today. Now, let's get into the show.
You know, I get a lot of questions sometimes, man. People be trying to figure me out like, 1 minute you rapping, the next you breaking down the industry on some executive guru shit. Are you a content creator, rapper, podcast host, part-time chef? Bro, what is it that you really do? I'm a rapper slash writer slash content creator. I'm the independent voice when it come to getting this paper. I'm an educator, news anchor, rule breaker, room shaker. Feeling by clean as a new taper. I'm the Daily Mail. I'm the rap game Dave Chappelle. Stay connected to the net like AOL. Sipping tea like wine in a holy grail. You don't like it, you know you go home my genitalia. Man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing. Shout it, man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing. Shout it, man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing. Shout it, whatever I wanna be. I gotta feel like I'm free, man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing, shout it, man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing, shout it, man, I'm mad thing. Yeah, I'm mad thing, shout it, whatever I wanna be. I gotta feel like I'm free, ayy. Misunderstood, never felt so good. High art nigga bridging gaps with the hood. Grew up Riverdale, the studio Glenwood. Paint a picture with the vision, I feel like it's Winwood. I'm a record breaker, full of questions, interrogator. Young player got the hole like a cheese grater. Big dog in bucks like Ben Baker. Throw it at me, I'ma beat it like a drum major. Honestly, anywhere that you're finding me, I'ma be in the top seat. Fuck a description, this gig working economy got me doing all kind of things. I don't make no apologies. I'm just a nigga from the south side trying to make it outside. I've been about mine. I don't need industry outlines. I'm finding my success in doing me. You don't feel it, nigga? What that got to do with me? Man, I'm mad thing.
What's going on, beautiful people? It's the kid J Nolan here. Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Industry, number one source for music, entertainment, commentary, and breakdowns. Hope everybody's doing well out there today. Y'all know yesterday we did go through the transcription of Diddy trial day 1. Technically day 2 because it was, the first day was them trying to solidify the jury pool. Day 2, they chose the jury and started opening statements. Took witness as an escort and security guard. Today, we have Cassie taking the stand. They're wasting no time getting to Cassie. All right. I wasn't expecting this to happen so soon. I know people were talking about her appearance in court yesterday. They were trying to keep as much of the press away from her as possible. But we are now into the thick of it. I'm going to be pulling up Inner City Press once more because they are on the ground in the courtroom and are basically live tweeting as the judge talks, as the testimonies are happening, as people are taking the stand. This person is literally in there. I don't know if he has some sort of AI glasses or headphones that are like translating this into a transcript or what. But this shit is coming out in as close to real time as possible. There may be a couple distinctions or things missed compared to when the official court transcript comes out. You know what I'm saying? But this is as close to accurate as we're going to get, especially during the day before the evening when court actually resides and they process the paperwork, okay? So just work with me. Now, I know a lot of people yesterday in the chat were questionable about the nature of Cassie, her role in Diddy's life, this thing he had going on with this freak-off stuff. I told y'all yesterday this is going to be incredibly nuanced, so it's going to be hard to really have a firm stance on it. I do believe regardless of anything, she was definitely abused. I do believe that there are instances where she was coerced against her will. Now, there's also testimony from an escort who actually had sexual contact with Cassie, who said there were moments in which she enjoyed it. Okay? So, again, this is incredibly nuanced because it's a seesaw between both things. Was she a victim? Did she enjoy it? She was abused. The witness also saw Diddy beating her up and saying, bitch, you better come when I call you, which is grounds to show, even from the testimony of the witness, that there were times she attempted to evade him. So this is not a black and white situation, all right? Also, not only Cassie, there is a Jane Doe involved. I'm not sure when Jane will be brought to the stand to tell her side of the story. But this is another romantic interest of Diddy, someone who he would not be monogamous with, who was also subjected to the freakoffs. The first time that the idea was brought to her, she thought it was just going to be a one-time threesome. She was open to it. But then they continued and she was against it. However, kind of same deal. We also have Diddy's ex-personal assistant, Mia. I believe Mia is actually a pseudonym, not a real name. But ex-assistant Mia, who was also allegedly SA'd by Diddy during her tenure of working for him. At some point, she will also be brought to the stand to tell her testimony. And I'm just prefacing with who we have on the table. Now let's get to Cassie. And again, I don't know if I'm going to be doing dailies on this. I'm going to see how close I can stay to consistent with this thing, because this is a time-consuming endeavor to keep track of, right? This is 8 weeks, and they're going to be doing this presumably about 5 days a week or something like it. But let's go ahead and just get into it. Inner City Press says, okay, U.S. versus Sean Combs, May 13, Cassie on deck after cross of escort Phillip. And Phillip is also a pseudonym, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, this is 4 hours ago, this morning. All rise, Judge Subramanian. Let's try to get through these issues efficiently as we have the jurors waiting. We have a letter from a juror that we will make court exhibit 1 on the videos. When will they be offered into evidence? U.S. Attorney Johnson says this afternoon. Judge Subramanian, this is about evidence that is coming into the case. The public has a right to know what is happening at trial. I don't see how we would navigate that concern. There's a potential impact on the jurors of signaling some evidence requires sealing. U.S. Attorney Johnson, we just wouldn't show the videos to the courtroom gallery, and the jurors and everyone in the well would wear headphones. These materials are sexually explicit or involve nudity. One has submitted a letter. Now, I do not have the letter here. He has it under a paywall. How much you charging, homie? All right, child. It was only $3. I paid for that shit, man. Fuck it, man. We here, right? So, this is inside of Inner City Press, Matthew, his paywall here. I paid for it, so okay. Diddy docket sealing sought. Sean Combs trial began. Talk of freak off video. Now lawyer for Cassie seeks sealing. Wigder letter here. SDNY courthouse, May 12th at 4:30 p.m. on September 16th. Inner City Press was told by the SDNY source to expect the big one. Okay, I don't know what the big one is, but we shall see. This was interesting. Detention memo on Patreon. I don't know what the detention memo is either. On May 5th, Inner City Press live tweeted jury selection day 1, including an HBO staffer. So this is like pieces that you can get access to inside of his piece. But the request for sealing, I'll check out. So this is what we came for, okay? So here we have Douglas Wigder writing a letter to the judge. Dear Judge Subramanian, we write as counsel for Cassandra Ventura, Cassie, in opposition to the news organization's application for an order unsealing sexually explicit videos that will be introduced into evidence at trial, okay? The news organizations do not cite any case, and nor are we aware of any authority granting this unprecedented request in a S-trafficking case to unseal videos depicting coercive sex acts, okay? So they want to make sure that these private freak-off videos containing Cassie remain sealed from public eye. For the reasons stated herein, we respectfully request that the court deny the motion and deny any request for news reporters to watch and listen to the video exhibits as they are being shown. Okay? Here they have legal standard for sealing the judicial documents. Federal courts employ two related but distinct presumptions in favor of public access to court proceedings and records. A strong form rooted in the First Amendment and a slightly weaker form based in federal common law. And of course, they're going to do references of case law to uphold their argument. In the analysis for either presumption, courts must first determine whether the record is a judicial document. There is no dispute that the sealed videos, which the government will seek to admit as evidence at trial, are relevant to the performance of the judicial function and useful in the judicial process and are considered judicial documents. Because the First Amendment right is considered more stringent than the common law right of access, courts need not encourage in the common law analysis when the First Amendment right attaches. What is this footnote here? Y'all got me on these footnotes. The news organization's position effectively seeks the unsealing of the videos as they are requesting public and media access to view the videos as they are presented to the jury. Their request that the court deny any motion to close the courtroom is premature and inapt here, as there has been no such application made to the court, and it is understood that the sealed videos will only be accessible to the parties, the court, and the jury. Okay? Which, I mean, to be honest, we really don't need to see that. Like, people would just run with that and do disgusting things with that footage. Public right of access is not absolute. That evidence may be relevant to the performance of the judicial function is not the only relevant consideration in evaluating the news organization's request. In determining whether the public and press should receive First Amendment protection in their attempts to access certain judicial documents, the Second Circuit has articulated two approaches. Under the first test, the court must consider whether the documents have historically been open to the press and general public, and whether public access plays a significant positive role in the functioning of the particular process in question. Under the second test, the court must evaluate the extent to which the judicial documents are derived from or are a necessary correlate of the capacity to attend the relevant proceedings. In fact, this court previously affirmed that descriptions of the content of the videos at issue were appropriately sealed in the party submissions pursuant to Lagos. In its addendum to Protective Order ECF 156, this court found good cause to order restrictions the parties have agreed to with respect to the storing, handling, and viewing of the sealed videos, demonstrating that it intended for these videos to remain sealed during and after the trial. The court instructed Agnifilo, thank you for the correction. I was saying Agnifilo, and Trader LLP to return the devices containing the sealed videos to the government within 1 week following either the jury's verdict or the defendant's plea of guilty to the government, so that they may be destroyed in accordance with paragraph 12 of the protective order. The addendum includes specific language that the provisions shall not terminate at the conclusion of this criminal prosecution, and the court will retain jurisdiction to enforce this order following termination of the case. The court's prior rulings highlight a recognition that this particular evidence raises unique and compelling circumstances requiring a careful balancing of interests. B, highly sensitive exhibits implicate Ms. Ventura's privacy interests. Simply stated, it's a huge invasion of privacy. We know that. The presumptive right to access is outweighed by the privacy interests of Ms. Ventura and others depicted in the videos. Documents may be sealed if specific on the record findings are made, demonstrating that closure is essential to preserve higher values and is narrowly tailored to serve that interest. The privacy interests of innocent third parties should weigh heavily in a court's balancing equation. Making the sexually explicit sealed videos public will effectively punish Ms. Ventura for testifying and re-traumatize her, as the public will watch her abuse when she was at her most vulnerable. Allowing the public to view the sealed videos will further violate her rights under the Crime Victims Act, which affords her the right to be treated with fairness and with respect for the victim's dignity and privacy. It would be profoundly unfair for Ms. Ventura's brave choice to testify publicly and using her own name to require such a gross invasion of her dignity. This is especially true because she will testify and be cross-examined about the content of the videos in an open courtroom, thereby undermining any argument that the videos themselves are necessary for the news organizations to report on the substance of this evidence. Ms. Ventura's privacy interests clearly outweigh the limited right of public access in this circumstance. The news organizations do not cite any authority supporting public access to sexually explicit evidence shown to a jury in a trafficking criminal trial, particularly when, as noted above, the public will hear detailed testimony concerning the contents of the sealed videos. I agree. Indeed, case law cited by the news organizations are inapposite and have facts entirely distinguishable from the unique circumstances of this case. Okay. C, publicization, could have just said publication, of the unsealed videos will have chilling effect on other survivors. As the government has already explained in its opening statement in this case, the unsealed videos depict individuals, including those other than Ms. Ventura, nude, intoxicating, and engaging in sexual activity. Public disclosure will jeopardize the identities of individuals who are not testifying at this trial and may implicate potential confidential pseudonymous witnesses. This is particularly so given that we anticipate Ms. Ventura will attest that defendant filmed her engaging in unwanted sexual acts and then threatened her with the distribution and publicization of the videos to manipulate Ms. Ventura into doing what defendant wanted. Unsealing these videos would therefore essentially allow the media to carry out the very threats that defendant held over her. Unsealing the videos would also therefore present an additional chilling effect on potential victims and witnesses who would be discouraged from cooperating with law enforcement and participating in the judicial process for fear of severe public humiliation and re-traumatization. Again, I agree. They're going to ask her questions specific to what's going on. They will have knowledge of what happened on the tape. She's going to have to answer to it. And as much as we would love to be a part of that process, we're not privileged to have everything laid out in front of us in that way. D, the exhibits have minimal value to the public's understanding of the trial. The news organization's ability to report accurately and fully on this matter is not hindered by their inability to view the sealed videos, nor will the lack of access to the sealed videos obstruct the public's ability to monitor the judicial process and have knowledge as to the substance of the evidence. During her anticipated testimony, Ms. Ventura will describe the videos in detail in an open courtroom and will be subject to cross-examination. The defense will be able to question Ms. Ventura on what the sealed videos depict, given the significant forthcoming testimony detailing the content of the sealed videos and the news organization's acknowledgement that there may be significant privacy interests at stake. The media's request that the videos are shown publicly is therefore unreasonably prurient. Okay. The public will learn of the content of the sealed videos through testimony in open court without viewing extremely sensitive and sexually explicit videos, and all parties will have the opportunity to explore and probe the weight of this evidence, even with the reasonable guardrails in court has already placed around this evidence. For reasons articulated herein, we respectfully request the court deny the news organization's motion to unseal. We are prepared to address our position and any further questions the court may have during tomorrow's proceedings. We thank the court for its time and attention to this matter. This was submitted yesterday. Now let's get back to it. All right, Combs Agnifilo. This is adult pornography. That's what this is, and I always say that in that way on purpose. So it's narrowly tailored. Our application is only that the visual images and the audio is within the ambit of the sealing order. We could ask questions tastefully. What would the NYT or WSJ do with this? Note, they are not the only press. Sometimes things get unsealed and published. Yes, as in Eric Adams, Crypto. On the two incidents with, and this is the judge, on the two incidents with Ms. Ventura when we discussed this last week, the defense, the assault in Connecticut, messages between Ms. Ventura and Mr. Combs, it's relevant. Judge says, let's see if there's any issue. U.S. Attorney Johnson says it should be excluded. Combs' other attorney, Tinny Garagos, he suspected she was cheating on him. She did not answer her phone. She got into a bar fight and tried to kill someone. What? So it's relevant to his suspicions after her substance abuse outside of their sexual relationship. She was taking drugs while close with her family in another state. Well, if you introduce her to drugs and she become addicted to it, I mean, damn. But we'll continue. Judge says, I overruled the government's objection. This can be asked about. Now, prior consistent statements. We're talking about a sequencing issue. Are they on direct or in rebuttal? U.S. Attorney Johnson, in their opening, they said Ms. Ventura made her own choices. They asked who really had control in this relationship, begging the answer that it was Ms. Ventura, Exhibit B315, the threat to release the tape. They said only she had it. Combs' other defense, Alexandra Shapiro, he has multiple attorneys working with him. We submit that these are hearsay until redirect. Judge says, if they come in, they're in. You don't object? Shapiro says we do. What we said in the opening was that Mr. Combs, judge says, you seem to say she was lying about threats to release videos. Shapiro, the predicate for prior consistent statements hasn't been met. Judge, I find that it has for this exhibit. The defense opening said there will be millions of reasons for people to testify here. That's the attack that was used as to B316 too. But the standard has not yet been reached as to B332 and B339. Okay, get Mr. Phillip in the witness box, then bring in the jury. All rise. Combs' other defense, Donaldson. So to continue, you return to the Gramercy. Okay, so first up, we're getting a conclusion to the escort, or who was a dancer turned escort. Then we'll get to Cassie. Got it. So you return to the Gramercy Hotel. Male dancer says yes. While you and Miss Cassie Ventura were having sex for hours, Miss Ventura took the lead. Philip, the dancer, says no. Donaldson says you took the lead. Philip says we were equally doing our thing. There wasn't a leader. Donaldson says you decided together. Philip says yes. Donaldson, fair to say she was in complete control of everything she was doing. Male dancer says I can't say that. Donaldson, you did not wear a condom. Philip said I did not. Your boss told you Miss Cassie Ventura paid for the hotel. Philip, yes. She paid with her credit card. Philip says I have nothing to do with that. She used her card to pay for the dancer. Okay, that assault at her apartment on 11th Avenue. Philip says I believe it was West End Avenue. Donaldson says you claim Mr. Combs told her to come over. She said she had her personal information on the computer, so wait a minute, and he threw a bottle at her. Philip says correct. So this is another instance of violence that he witnessed. Donaldson says he comes back out and says, are you ready? Philip corrects, are you guys ready? Donaldson, isn't it true Mr. Combs told you, yo man, I'm going to have to deal with this. You need to get the fuck out. Philip says that is not correct. Donaldson, in 2023, didn't you tell prosecutors, he said, yo man, U.S. attorney says objection, not in evidence. Judge says sustained. You can only use it to try to refresh his recollection. Donaldson says, read it to yourself. Does it refresh you? Male dancer Philip, I do not remember saying that. What I am reading here, get the fuck out. USA attorney says objection. Judge says disregard. Donaldson, did you date a model named Melia? Philip says Malia. Donaldson fucking up. He says, and I didn't say I dated her. We were friends. Donaldson, you were with her and Cassie, with someone not Mr. Combs. Oof. So y'all was getting down and dirty outside of the confines of Diddy with another friend. He says yes. You told Melia you saw Cassie socially. This nigga still fucking the name up. Male dancer says yes. Donaldson, you thought Cassie wanted to see you one-on-one. Nothing to do with Sean Combs, right? Philip, I don't see what you mean. In front of the Dream Hotel, that's what you thought. Philip says no. You only saw her inebriated one time? Philip says I saw her passed out on the couch. Mr. Combs told me I don't think it's going to happen today. Donaldson says the time with the other male. You rotated? Philip says not correct. Donaldson, you watched. All right. So this is a situation where another man tapped in and Philip was observing. Donaldson says, you said Mr. Combs was directing, but do you recall meeting the prosecutors on March 28, 2025 and telling them you didn't recall Mr. Combs giving directions about positions? He says, yes. So he didn't direct. Philip says incorrect. Okay, so he's trying to point out inconsistencies in Mr. Phillips' story of whether or not Diddy was giving directions at the freak off. Okay. Donaldson, you thought you were in a relationship with Cassie, didn't you? Philip says no. You wanted to get along with her to date her. Philip says, if she let me, I would have. I know that's real. Donaldson says, you get jealous of Mr. Combs? Philip says no. Did you not tell them that Mr. Combs would tell you it's my turn? Not on some Skip Bayless. Okay. U.S. attorney says, objection. Can we have a sidebar? Donaldson says, didn't you tell the government that you would feel jealous because you liked Miss Ventura romantically? Philip says, I do not recall that. Uh-oh, that nigga said, pull it up. Donaldson says, put up 3570. U.S. attorney, just for the parties. Philip says, I do not recall that. Okay, so he told them a couple things that he is now contradicting on the stand. Okay, so of course, these are going to feel like wins for Diddy's defense. Nothing further. Judge redirect. U.S. attorney, please explain why you now say Mr. Combs directed you. Philip says he asked about positions, but Mr. Combs did tell us what to do, use baby oil. The timing of the handling of cash, how did the amount compare to your stripping services? He said he made $3,800 more. How much were you paid to perform when you could? He said $700 to $5,000 or $6,000. And when you couldn't perform, as in, I guess when you could, as in when you could get your manhood up to do what was being asked. And when you couldn't perform, they paid me nothing. So when he couldn't get to it, he would leave empty-handed and would just be in a watching session, I suppose. U.S. attorney said, did Miss Ventura call you after the Dream Hotel? Yes. Do you know who she was with? No. Did she answer your text messages? Never, almost. You said you wanted to hug her. Why? Philip says, I could see she was afraid. What did you do? He said, I could not engage. I was messed up. I'm guessing he was drugged as well. U.S. attorney, what did Mr. Combs say to you? He said, it's time for you to go. In the Gramercy Hotel, who was in the room? Sean Combs, myself, and Cassie. When she appeared to enjoy herself, was Sean Combs always in the room? Yes. All right. Was that the same man who called her bitch and beat her? Uh-oh. Philip says, I did not see the beating, I presume. Now, yesterday, he said he saw beating. Today, he says he heard. Ain't gonna lie, y'all. This is getting interesting. I can only go off of the quotes that are being portrayed in front of me. Combs Donaldson says, objection. Judge says sustained. You heard slapping, so he heard, not seen. But we can infer, you know what I'm saying? Just like the judge said, if somebody come in holding a wet umbrella, you can assume that it was raining yesterday, if y'all tuned in for that. Yes, nothing further. Recross briefly. Here we get Donaldson. This document, do you see where you said I'm on the Upper West Side? She says 10 West End Ave. Hit me when you're there. Yes. Do you see your text? Don't give a fuck if I'm a little tipsy. I love y'all niggas. Yes. You love them niggas? Combs Donaldson says, and that was after the beating? Yes. Nothing further. So this is Cassie giving him directions of where to meet up, this time at West End. He said he was on the way. He don't give a fuck. He love him. Nothing further. Redirect. U.S. Attorney says, why did you write that? Phillips said, I wanted them to see I had no problem with what he had done. It kept it going, which of course he's getting this for financial reasons. And of course he probably wanted to spend time with Cassie as well, since he felt they had a personal connection. U.S. Attorney says, no further questions. Sidebar before the next witness. Yes. Okay. Here he goes on to try to sell some more things, which, hey, do your thing. Let's continue. Judge. Jurors, take a break. We have some issues to deal with. Jurors leave. Another of Diddy's defense. Okay. Ana Maria Estevio. We'd like Miss Ventura's husband to not be allowed in the courtroom during her testimony. We may need to call him as a witness later, depending on the direct. U.S. Attorney Johnson says, I'm not sure how Mr. Fine's testimony would be relevant. Judge says, Ms. Grrrls. Tenney says, give me 15 seconds, if he wants to come into the courtroom today, but we ask that he be excluded when the testimony gets into post 2018. Okay, so they don't want him seeing Cassie's testimony and influencing his answers at a later time. They want him to speak based on his knowledge rather than her recollection. Okay. In my initial examination, I will ask about post 2018, but only about devices. Ms. Grrrls, that's okay. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. So they took a break here and resumed. All rise. The government calls Cassandra Ventura. Now we get to Cassie. Of course, there's going to be some people that was mad. Like, why didn't we get there sooner? Because we going through the entire process. If you want it faster, speed up the video or something. Okay. She takes the stand, extremely pregnant. For those that don't know, Cassie is with child right now. She's pregnant. How old are you? She says 38. What is your work? Musician and entertainer. How long were you with Sean? 10 years. I believe it was 11. But either way, hey, she says 10, I say 10. Did you get in arguments? Yes, it would result in violence, dragging. What else did he do? This is Cassie. Stomp me in the head if I was down. How frequently was he violent? She says too frequently. I would get black eyes and bruises. Let me show you a video. LA hotel elevator lobby shown. This is the video that we've all seen, but they have a version that we have not. Where is this? The Intercontinental in Los Angeles. It was after a freak off. What does that entail? The hiring of an escort, setting it up. How did you feel when he first asked for it? Cassie says, confused, nervous. I wanted to make him happy. Did you agree to one when he first proposed one? She says, yes. Then there were more. It wasn't something I wanted to do, at least not that frequently, okay? So at this point, she's saying she agreed. She's emotionally attached to this man. He presented something that he enjoyed to do. She thought it would make him happy. She said, hey, I was down. But he wanted to do it at a rate that she was not okay with. And this is why I say it gets nuanced, because y'all know in any other situation regarding consent, you can have sex with somebody 10 times. On the 11th, if they say no and you proceed to penetrate them, that is against consent, right? So if there's any time that it's against consent, it has to be on record that it was against consent. Now, again, it's very nuanced. It's going to create conflict. It's going to create doubt as to, the entirety of the story. But you have, I can't say what you're going to do. But for me, I have to look at it from that perspective of nuance. Sometimes it was consensual. Sometimes it wasn't. Okay, we'll continue. Cassie says, I didn't know what no could turn into. What do you mean? Making him angry. What were you afraid would happen if you said no? She says, the time he had blackmail materials. What did you give the government? Laptops. Okay? Blackmail materials. I've handed up GXB. Do you recognize it? She says, yes, I've reviewed this drive. It has communication and documents pertaining to Mr. Combs. Did you review photos on it? She says, yes. What's this photo? Me in 2004 with Carrie Morgan. So we have 20 years, or at least documents that date back to over 20 years ago with Carrie Morgan. When did you sign with Bad Boy Records? Ventura 2006. It was a 10-album deal. How you sign a 10-album deal and only get to put out one? That's craziness. Did you release any after late 2006? No. Who's in this photo? Kim Porter. She was Sean's ex from before me and the mother of his children. Now, what's interesting is she signed with Diddy in 2006. How old was she in 2006? So 2006, she was born in 86, so she was 19. And they have photo of her in 2004, which would have made her on the line between 17 to 18, depending on when the month of the photo. We'll continue. Where did you celebrate your birthday in this photo? In Las Vegas. Carrie Morgan was there too. We are out on his patio on my 21st birthday, VMAs. What happened then? Sean kissed me in the bathroom. I ran back to my hotel. I told Carrie. When you got back to New York, I'd visit him in the Trump Hotel in Columbus Circle. His apartment was being renovated. What were you going, I guess you mean doing, with your music career? Cassie says, trying to come up with a concept. Sean called all of the shots. What is the age difference between you and Sean? She says 17 years. So at this time, well, just period, it was 17-year difference. So he was down near 37, 38. How did you feel when Sean invited you to hotels? She said nervous, excitement. We're going to talk about music. He introduced me to oral sex. I didn't understand it. Did you visit Sean in Miami? She says yes. I went with Carrie Morgan and Dallas Austin. What did you and Sean do together? Sexual intercourse. He gave me Blue Dolphin ecstasy on a boat. Had you once before taken ecstasy unintentionally? Yes. How did you take ecstasy unintentionally? She says it was in Gatorade. When you took it intentionally, now I don't know if she got the Gatorade from him or elsewhere. It does not say. When you took it intentionally with Sean, how did it feel? Like rolling. I've never rolled before, so I don't know what that feels like. At the time, what did you think? Ventura says that we were spending a lot of time together. I thought we were monogamous. Was it made public? No. I was his artist, also his family, his children. Okay, so it was kept secret in the beginning stages. Who was linked to him publicly? Kim Porter. How did Sean treat you at this time? She says we had fun. Okay, so at this time, this is consensual. She's having a good time. She's trying to work on music. They're hanging out. All is well. You know, he introduces her to drugs. She had it one time unintentionally. I don't feel that that is an introduction. All right, we'll keep going. What was his lifestyle like? He had all these assistants. He could get things done. He traveled quite a bit. What's this photo? Sean and I at a strip club in like 2007 or 2008, Halloween. How did Sean's moods vary day to day? Is there something missing here? Sometimes there'd be some missing shit here. I'll continue though, because I don't see no anything in between. When it swung, could you describe it? She says anger, zoning out. How did it impact you? Greatly. The next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. There was also psychological abuse. He'd tell me to watch my mouth, change my face. How did he keep tabs on you? We didn't live far apart. He'd send security to come find me or a trusted assistant. Like who? David James, Christina Coram, and we all know that name is very prevalent, even in the present with Diddy. Was your relationship exclusive? No. Did you see other men? Cassie says yes. Did Sean see other women? Yes. He said, I am Puff Daddy. I was insanely jealous. She admits to jealousy. So, as the defense pointed out jealousy before, she admits jealousy. Did you move to LA with him? She says yes. He wanted to be close to his kids who were there. Where did you live in LA? We don't need to know that. How tall? Well, they're doing other addresses. I don't think these are current addresses no more. Where did you live? 875 Comstock Avenue. How tall was the building? No more than 17 floors. Where did Sean live? 200 South Mapleton. Sean would use a golf cart to get back and forth. Who paid your rent in LA? Sean, except when I had the house in Studio City. So at this point, he's paying for her apartment. Why'd you pay then? She says, I can afford it. So then she got her house in Studio City. She paid for it herself. And I wanted to have some control. It was accepted. By whom? Sean. Now, you know they're going to use that, talking about you was able to get some control. How many songs did you write with Sean? She says hundreds. Most were never released. Some got leaked on the internet, some on mixtapes. How many albums on your deal were not released? 9. Did you get paid for them? No. She says the freakoffs became a job. There was no time to do anything else but do them, then try to recover. How much time in your week would freakoffs take? She says the longest was 4 days, significant periods of time. 4-day freakoffs out of a week. At this point, they took another break. They resumed 38 minutes ago, okay? So this is as close to real time as I can possibly get. And by the time I wrap up this video, I'm sure I probably won't have it all because it's still active. It's happening in real time right now. There's going to be hours more of this. So I may have to tap back in later for anything I miss. Okay, 116, they're back. Judge says, welcome back. Who is your manager at Bad Boy Records? Cassie says, James Cruz. 50 Cent really hates James Cruz. Unrelated. U.S. Attorney says, what did he tell you? That he was managing me with one hand tied behind his back. He had to check everything with Sean. So basically, if he the manager, but he really has no say-so, he really was just like a nigga to keep tabs on her for real. But we'll keep going. USA Attorney. How did you make money if your records weren't being released? She said, I did hosting parties when Sean approved them. What comments did Sean make about your physical appearance? She said that I looked too Mexican with my hair like that. Okay, this must have been when she cut the half of her hair. Damn. How did he like your nails? White, French tipped. Here we get into the standard white. Hair, it varied. I shaved my head in 2009. Your body, he told me to work out, prepare for the freak-offs. So he kept her in shape, allegedly, for freak-off condition only, because she wasn't doing anything else other than hosting parties. How did you feel about his comments? She said it varied. What else did Sean pay for? Cars. Did he give you cash? She says yes, but he would take things away depending on how he felt. What else would he take away? She said, my self-confidence. Who would take things away? Staff. She says, I assume staff. Judge says objection. Defense says objection. Judge says jury will disregard that last answer. So the assumption is stricken. Who took your laptop and phone? She says security. How long would they be gone for? However long I was being punished for. So security would come and take her laptop and phone and basically have her sitting in isolation on punishment as an adult. How often were you in contact with Sean's staff? She said daily. Who are in these photos? This is Christina Coram once again and Miss Fletcher. What did you call Miss Coram? KK. And who's this? D-Rock. He was Sean's security. Not D-Rock. D-Rock been around a long time. Back in Biggie days. How frequently were you in Sean's residences? She said all the time. Did they all have safes? She says yes. What did you observe in them? She says cash, jewelry, cameras, and videotapes. Guns in New York, LA, and Miami, and Alpine, New Jersey. Okay? Do you recall an incident between Sean and Suge Knight? Whoa. She says yes. We were having a freak off in LA. D-Rock came in and said Suge was down at a diner. Sean drove over there. What was your reaction? I cried. I said, don't do something stupid. Now, I don't know the nature of this Sean and Diddy and Suge Knight standoff, but Diddy just jumped in his car and was ready to get down. Okay. She pleaded with him not to go. Were you ever handed a gun? She says yes. We were going to a club in downtown LA. We'd taken mushrooms. I was high. I was told to put the gun in my bag. I was freaking out. Now, y'all do remember. J-Lo. That's all I'm going to say. Who was present? Ventura, a driver, security, and Sean. Ventura says, another time I saw them get dressed and grab guns and leave in an SUV. How long were they gone? This nigga was out here spinning? 30 or 40 minutes. Let me switch topics. How soon into the relationship did Sean mention voyeurism to you? Voyeurism? First 6 months or a year. How old were you? 22. Okay, she was of age. I'm gonna be real quick here. And this is my own personal, okay? Now at this time, she's 22 years old. Diddy is 40 at this point. Or nearing 40. Between 38 to 40. Okay? She's 22 years old. We recently saw the situation with Shannon Sharp dealing with a 22-year-old. And we see the allegations out on him. I feel like the response between the two situations are being viewed a little bit differently this week. Not sure why, but I've just felt a different temperature out in the streets or in the tweets these last couple days. Unrelated, but related. I'll continue though. Why did you agree to try a freak off? Good question. I wanted to make him happy. Where was the first freak off? Ventura, one of his homes in Los Angeles. 2A627. Who is this? The first escort. So this is where she gets introduced to the freak offs the first time. Do you know his name? No. I'll call him the first escort. Were you aware he was paid? She says yes, to dance and to have intercourse with me. What drugs did you take? Ecstasy and alcohol, she says, before things started. Did you disguise your appearance? Sean said we would disguise ourselves. I wore a masquerade mask. So the very first time that they actually did this together, at least with her, they disguised themselves with masquerade masks. What was a session in a freak off? Until the escort finished. How many sessions with first escort? At least 2. So they went a couple rounds. They ask, how did you feel? She says, I was high. So I didn't feel much. Dirty and confusion, and that he was happy with me. Why did you feel you couldn't say no? She says, I didn't want to make him angry or upset after he'd shared this part of himself with me. So she felt like he was sharing an intimate detail of his life with her that nobody else knew about. So I guess she felt endeared that she was being brought into this dark sex world, right? We'll continue. How frequent did the freak-offs become? She says weekly for a consistent amount of years. They ask, when was your last one? 2017, 2018. How long were you awake during the freak-off? She says, I never slept. I took drugs, ecstasy and Molly, cocaine. So this mixture of drugs kept her up for hours at a time. She never actually fell asleep. They ask, do you recall all of the freak-offs? She said that would be impossible. Did you want to stop? She says, yes, I was humiliated. I didn't have those words then. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. She begins to cry. Did you tell him you didn't want to? She says, yes. She continues, I brought it up gently. I didn't want him to just do it with someone else. Oof. This is where things get a little tricky here. She's emotionally connected to him, right? She's being brought into this world. She doesn't want to do it, but she wants to make him happy. Okay? And she says she brought it up gently that she'd like to stop, but she also did not want to be replaced. I don't know how that's going to fare in her direction. I got to be honest. I'm being honest about all this stuff, man. I got to take it as it is. I do know that she's being heavily manipulated in that relationship. But also, when she says, I didn't want him to just do it with someone else, that's something that his defense is going to attack heavily. This is what some people were saying yesterday. Were you able to express your concerns to him? Defense says objection, leading. Judge says rephrase. Why would you talk to him gently? She says, I didn't want him to be angry. Follow up here. U.S. attorney says, what is this? Ventura answers, email between me and Sean. What did you call him? Cassie says, Pop Pop. U.S. attorney says, why? Cassie says, he asked me what I called my grandfather. I did it, but now I think it was disrespectful. So this was updated 36 seconds ago. Some email, we don't have access to the email, but it's an email correspondence between herself and Diddy. In the email, she's visibly seen calling him Pop Pop. They ask her why she's calling him Pop Pop in the email. That is what Diddy requested. She said, what do you call your granddaddy? Call me that. So instead of calling him daddy, she called him Pop Pop. She says she did it, but now she thinks it was disrespectful in hindsight. Very interesting here. We'll proceed as much as we possibly can here. There's another update. U.S. attorney says, what did you write? She wrote, I really need to fuck. Why did you write that? She says, because I wanted to be with him. They say, I'll read your messages. You read yours. No. So they're going to read Diddy's messages. She'll read her own. Again, there are some typos in here because I don't know what he's using, some sort of AI thing to transcribe this stuff. So they say, U.S. attorney / Diddy, his email. You don't want to do anymore? Cassie says, I'm so predictable. At this point, this is not going to look good for Cassie either, because they have email evidence of her telling him that she wants to get down to smash Diddy. They ask why. She said, because I wanted to be with him. So, of course, again, they're going to question the nature of the relationship. If you wanted to leave, why are you sending him messages of wanting to be with him? Right? But again, I think this has to be dealt with carefully and in a nuanced nature, because I think both things can be true here. But of course, who deals in that? We've got one more update here from Inner City Press. It says, what did you think this meant? Okay, as in Diddy asking her, you don't want to do no more. Cassie says that he knew I didn't want to do the freakoffs anymore, but then I backpedaled. They ask why. She says to not make him angry, he could be violent. They ask, where'd you get your outfit? She said, pleasure chest elsewhere. All right. So this is interesting because you already know if they had this email correspondence where he's asking her if she no longer wants to do it and she admits that she backpedaled, people are definitely going to pounce on that and say he gave you an opportunity to leave or stop. You know? So this is going to be very interesting. I am not a member of the jury. I am no judge. I just know it's going to get very interesting. And I'm certainly no attorney. They ask, did you get piercings? Cassie says, yes, Sean came with me. Which of his homes did you have not freakouts in? She says, Miami and New York. What other homes? She says, her homes, all but Studio City. In what other cities? Not Atlanta. Ibiza. Okay. In what hotels in New York did you have freak-offs? At the Trump and the Gramercy. Intercontinental, 44th Street, yes. Elsewhere, Mandarin Oriental, Fontainebleau. What names were used? Jackie Starr, I used Frank Black. So I guess she was Jackie Starr, Diddy was Frank Black. That's crazy. He going by Frank Black when Biggie went by Frank White. Wow. They ask, what supplies for freak-offs? She says, Astro Glide, baby oil, condoms. Who brought the supplies? She says, security, Sean's assistants. Which brand of baby oil? Johnson's. Ain't them the ones they found? How was it used? Sean said, you need to be glistening. Oh, wow. This ain't right, man. Were there freak-offs where you ran out of baby oil? The defense comes in, says, objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant. U.S. Attorney says, you also mentioned Astroglide. Defense, same objection. Irrelevant. Judge says, sidebar. Okay. So they trying to wiggle out about more details on Astroglide and baby oil. Now remember, one of the narratives about this baby oil is that it's also allegedly got some substances in it. I personally have not heard that in relation to the U.S. attorney or anyone saying that. It's only internet talk, speculation of such. But it's very interesting that it's continuing to come up as far as the Astroglide and baby oil contents in the cross-examination here. Here we get a follow-up. We were just talking about Astroglide. How was it used? She said lubricant. If you ran out, what? We'd call either staff or the bail desk, give them a tip. Were the freak-offs lit? She says initially it was candle, strong-smelling Glade. Okay, so they were using candles as the only source of light. Very, very dim. If they happen to run out, they would call hotel staff to come provide more. So that kind of takes away from the idea of laced in some circumstances, right? Because if the hotel staff is having to provide them with more, then I would assume it's coming from the store going straight into action. Now, some of the lubricant that they already have, that Diddy may already have on hand. Who knows? But again, that's all speculation. This is right after being asked about what they lit the room with. They ask, any other use of candle wax? She says, a few times poured on my body. Okay, so there was some candle wax activity going on sexually. Who set the temperature of the room? She said, Sean, I was expected to do freakoffs on my period. Hey, bro. Hey, bro, what we doing? What we doing? Why you flying so close to the sun? Why you want her doing on her period, sir? They asked, did you want to do that? She said no. Here, they ask her if she wanted to be urinated on, because this was a part of the conversation yesterday. People were saying that it was placed out there that Cassie asked for it. So they get right to it. They said, did you want to be urinated on? The defense says, objection. Judge says grounds. Defense says asked and answered. Judge overrules. Cassie says, no, I did not want it. He said, how did it feel? Cassie says, it was disgusting. It was too much. I choked. No one could think I wanted it. U.S. Attorney asked, why were you choking? She said, too much urine in my mouth. This is fucking disgusting. They asked, who else urinated on you? She says, Sean. So not only did the paid escorts do it, Diddy did it too. She asked, U.S. Attorney says, did you want Sean to urinate on you? She says, I didn't want anyone to urinate on me. They ask, how often did it happen? She said, often enough, which means that this happened in a frequency. You know what I'm saying? This wasn't a one-time deal. This is something that was a part of the program. Okay? To which she said she did not enjoy. Which hotel charged the most for damage to the room? Now, what I want to know is, when you say which hotel charged the most for damage to the room, I need a little bit more context as to how these rooms are being damaged. I don't know if that's addressed. I don't see it in the inner city press transcripts here. If anyone has any information as to how these rooms were being damaged, please let me know. She says the Intercontinental in New York, they redecorated the whole room for ridiculous money. U.S. Attorney says back to the urination. Judge says, Miss Johnson, only a few more questions. Okay? So she can only ask a few more. They're about to take a break. Why didn't you say no? Cassie said, it was obvious I didn't want to be on the ground being urinated on by two men. Okay. She said it was obvious. Is there anything in between there? Nope, nothing in between there. She said it was obvious I didn't want to do it. Okay. Didn't want to be on the ground being urinated on by two men at the same time. U.S. Attorney asks, where did you find escorts? She says initially Craigslist. So her and Diddy were finding people off of Craigslist to have these unprotected sexual encounters with, where she is being peed on by like it's one thing to go through a service that you're familiar with, which is random and nasty enough. But Craigslist? Wow. You couldn't even trust Craigslist to get, if you wanted to get a fucking phone from a nigga, to be like, man, is this shit broken? Is this shit stolen? You gonna try to rob me when I meet up with you to get this shit? Shit was sketchy enough just for a regular transaction, let alone some freak off shit. Unprotected with bodily fluid included. Some nasty shit, man. And she's saying there were actions that she did not enjoy, she did not like. However, a lot of it is also consensual. At this point, there was a break. They come back. Okay, judge says, ready? All rise. Ms. Ventura, in what cities did you respond to ads on Craigslist? She said, in New York. Nah, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, man. New York, only been there a couple times. Love the people. Not the cleanest place to be getting randos off of Craigslist to get put body in you. Did you respond to ads on Backpage as well? She says, yes. All right. Who directed you to communicate with escorts? Objection! Who, if anyone? Same objection. Assumes a fact, not an evidence. Did you ever reach out to escort independently? Cassie says no. Did you ever not use an escort who arrived? She said one couldn't perform, so Sean sent him on. What was a safe escort? Cassie says not a cop and someone who not run and tell everyone about their experience with us. So that was the only people that was safe. We don't bring cops in and yappers. Okay? That was the only standard. As long as you ain't a cop and as long as you can keep some secrecy about you, you can come through. They say, why not a cop? She says, I learned this whole situation was not legal. Objection! Jury will disregard that last answer, the judge says. So I guess it's it's not okay for her to say that she didn't know it was legal up until a certain point. Anyway, they say, how did Cash get there? Judge says security or he brought it himself. That's not clearly can't be the judge saying that. That's Cassie. Okay. Again, there are some typos and things. Okay. Ventura, security or he brought it himself. The escort Dave. Do you know his real name? She says Clayton Howard. Okay. So there's an escort that went by the name Dave, whose real name is Clayton. They ask, who is this? Photo shown to witness. This one is Daniel. Okay. Daniel is the one who's been testifying for the last 2 days. Daniel Phillip. What service did you use? She said a dancer service. Do you recognize Jules? Okay, this is a man. Is this a man named Jules? This ain't Yes Jules. Okay. And this ain't no other Jules you could think of. This is somebody completely in the escort business, okay? Yes. In what cities did you have freak-offs with Jules? New York, LA, Vegas. Do you know his last name? No. Who's this? She said, I knew him as the Punisher, not the Punisher. The Punisher. Did you use drugs at every freak-off? Cassie says, yes. I needed to dissociate and become emotionless. Okay, so under every circumstance of a freak-off, she was drugged. Okay, which I think will play a very vital role in the blurry line I talked about with consent, because it's understood if a person is under the influence, they cannot legally consent. So this is where things, can get a little bit tricky, we'll just say. Who else used drugs at freak-offs? She said Sean did, sometimes the escort. What other drugs did you use? She said Special K, which I am not. Is that ketamine? GHB and mushrooms. I'm not a scholar on drugs. Okay, that's just I'm not. U.S. Attorney says, I'll read Sean's parts of this email, you read you. She says, when should I take the thing? When will you be there? Pausing you there, what did you mean? She says, drugs. Diddy says, I took mine, I'm flying. What does he mean, they ask. She said, he's high, meaning he's in the air. Flying. He already floating, okay? They ask, why did you take more drugs? She said, to not be present with the experience. Why? Cassie says, because it was something I hated. How did you react to ecstasy and MDMA? She says, it could make me vomit. What would he say? She says, to continue. Did you want to continue to have intercourse when you wanted to vomit? She says, no. How does GHB make you feel? She says, drunk, tipsy. Cocaina, she says, makes my heart race. I'm not a huge fan. Mushrooms, she said, the walls come alive. That'll be some scary shit for a nigga like me. At this point, another break has been initiated by the judge. We'll take a break. Don't know how long that break pursued. Let me see. As y'all can see, I'm trying to give y'all the closest up to the minute updates as I can give. At 4:15, they're back. The judge says you may continue. Remember, her last remark was that the walls come alive off the shrooms. All right. U.S. Attorney Johnson says, when drugs ran out, how did you know who to reach out to? Cassie says, Sean would tell me. Remember, all instances of Sean are Diddy. During the session, how would you know to move to the next step? She says, Sean. So he's giving the directives along the way. Next, what would happen after the escort finished on you? Okay, you know, what you mean by finish is when you arrive, okay? Trying to keep this as clean as possible. When you're done, when you, okay? She says, Sean would want it put on his body in the next room. So the escort offloads on her. She then takes the sample and rubs it on him at his request. Him being Diddy. They asked, did you do that? She said, I did. U.S. Attorney asks, where? Cassie answers, usually on his nipples. This is becoming, I mean, this is disgusting. It's been nasty. It's been deplorable, but it's getting progressively worse. Usually on his nipples. Did you want to do that? Cassie says no. All right. They ask, how did she feel? She says, I was an object being heavily objectified by men. Sometimes he would watch by FaceTime. Okay. U.S. Attorney says, were some sessions recorded on your devices? She says, because they were there. If you saw them on your device, what would you do? So when they say that the videos were on her phone, why were they not on his? It's because he was using her phone to record, and there was also a camcorder for his own personal records. Because remember, the first escort said that there was the use of a phone and a camcorder in his sessions. Okay. So Diddy was not using his own phone. He would use hers. Okay. Then there were also instances where I believe he would tune in via FaceTime. Yes. So other situations, he would watch by FaceTime, again on her phone, but he would call in with his. Okay. Now, before I continue, I do want to say there's two different things at play here. There's Cassie herself, who's participating in this, sometimes consensually, sometimes maybe not. But then you also have the interstate trafficking, where it's flying in escorts to have sexual encounters. They're having these encounters in states where prostitution is still illegal. So it's not just them having one-on-one sexual preferences. There are some laws being broken along the way. Now, how heavily that is going to weigh in the prosecution here, I can't say. I am not a lawyer, paralegal, or any form of legal professional. Just putting that out there because I know some people are going to say that this is just their nasty sexual proclivities. But what they were getting into does have legal ramifications. Just like people get arrested for soliciting prostitutes in different cities. Remember Mr. C got arrested for soliciting escort or something like that. So just want to be clear on what we're talking about here. All right. Now they ask her, if you saw them on your device, what would you do? Cassie says, I would delete them. Okay. U.S. attorney asks why. She says they were disgusting. I never wanted anyone to see them. She says, were Sean's devices used sometimes? She says, yes. And I asked him to delete them. So actually, some of his devices were also used as well. But then you also got to keep in mind, device is not necessarily specifically saying a phone, but I'm guessing maybe at times. But also there's a camcorder. It was already been spoken about the camcorder. She asked him to delete them. They ask, did he? She says, I don't know. Now, what I also don't know is whether or not when she's deleting them, are they being deleted from the cloud completely, or are they just being deleted from the phone? Because there is footage of freakoffs, not to mention things that were recovered from his homes. So there's a lot to unpack here as of the nature of these recordings, okay? Stuff that I can't personally answer. All right, the next question here is, did you ever leave a freak off before it was over? So they're asking if Cassie got up and left in the middle of one of these encounters. She says, yes. At the Century City Intercontinental, I finally had a premiere coming up and I didn't want to mess it up, but Sean hit me, okay? So she was actually they were in the middle of a freak off, she's saying, and she was trying to leave so that she could get to a premiere because she finally had something coming up that was worth her while, because her occupation by this time was pretty much sleeping around with whoever he lined up in front of her. So she was like, shit, I'm trying to be me for once, right? She didn't want to mess it up. She says, but Sean hit me. Okay. At what point did Sean hit you? She says, between sessions. What happened next? She says, I got to the elevator. Next thing I knew, I was thrown to the ground. Who threw you down? Sean. He grabbed me by my neck and my hoodie. Okay, U.S. attorney says, let me show you the video. They played the hotel hallway video of her being abused in the courtroom, okay? We have no privilege to see the unedited version, but we know what we saw. Okay, U.S. attorney says, what are you doing? She says, trying to use the hotel phone. They ask, what is Sean doing? She says, taking my phone and my bag. At this point, judge says we'll break for the day. Okay, so that means most likely tomorrow we'll resume with Cassie back on the stand. Okay, more details. So they finally got to what that hotel video was all about. People were unsure what that was all about, if they were really in a freak off or if this was just an incident of her, catching when that his guard was down and tried to flee. But she says that this was in between sessions. She had a premiere coming up, so she actually wanted to be present for herself at this time rather than sleeping with these escorts and Diddy or entertaining him. And that's what led to that abuse. So I think that also contextually changes some things, because we're not just talking about DV at this point. We're talking about DV in the midst of her in a freak off trying to escape and him not allowing her to do so in the middle of these arranged sexual proclivities. Okay? Going to be very interesting here. Now, I know I'm quite sure there's people flying off with all types of, thoughts, opinions, ideas, legal statutes, everything in the chat by now. I ain't gonna try to put my finger on this, man. I'm just gonna let this thing play out and see where it goes. And be honest with y'all, man, this shit is a disgusting ass fucking roller coaster, but a roller coaster indeed. Okay? Oh. I guess we'll pick up tomorrow, because clearly this thing is turning out to be more than I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I expected, to be honest. But it's a train wreck that you can't really turn away from. Well, let me speak for myself. But clearly I'm getting a lot of requests. People hitting me on the Twitters like, yo, you talking about the Diddy trial, nigga? Where you at? I'm like, damn, homie. I'm tired of this nigga. But we'll resume as much as I can, as much as my capacity can hold. I still got other content coming out in the midst of it. Seems like court is wrapping up around in the vicinity of 5:30 Eastern time every day, which is still within the realms of my recording time. So maybe, we can continue this a bit. But this is a lot. 8 weeks is a fucking lot, bro. 2 months of this shit every day, except weekends. That's a lot. We'll see. But let me know what y'all think of all this down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of the Dancers Part 2 testimony. Let me know what you think of Cassie's testimony from today. And for my legal professionals out there, be sure to let me know in the comments, based on the information that we have in front of us at this point. Let me know what y'all are thinking from a legal standpoint, because I can only give my opinion with limited legal knowledge. I have nearly none. So let me know, all right? Be sure to like and share this video. If this is your first time seeing me on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, become an insider. I will catch y'all on the next one. Much love and respect, y'all. Peace.
King of my city and cul-de-sac. Coming, I swinging like soldier rags. Leading my people like quarterback. Boy, I study this shit, I'm an almanac. Had to get up and grind. Knowledge is booming, I'm here to apply. Came with the chip and the dip, it just single the mind. We finna do more than survive. I need my check. Spinning the block for the Gouda. We hitting the jeweler to flood out the net. We don't do beef on computers, I'm straight out the sewer. We come when you rest. Niggas be looking perplexed, so keeping my foot on their neck. No map, I trust my gut for the quest. But drama, I'm fully abreast. I was ready for years and they doubted me. All of a sudden they tell me they proud of me. I been dropping these haters like calories. Cross them out, I came back with some boundaries. Stand for my honor, but too raw, no corner. Packing the stick with a drummer. Wanna catch my bad, won't fumble. I done came too far to be humble.